So good morning again, everyone. My name is Liz Wolfe, and I am honored to be participating in today's service, which is our annual question box service. And so the way this works, for those of you who have never seen it before, is you submit questions and I curate them, and then I present them to both Ember and Schuyler, who are our question box answerers today. And they have not seen the questions. They don't know what they are. And I do want to start by saying that there are a couple of things to know. Number one, there were so many questions. I tried to combine some together, but there were so many that were not able to be put in the brief time that we have together that we're going to give them to Schuyler and Ember, and they are going to be answering them in their podcast, which is sure to be a very interesting read. So if you submitted a question and I don't ask the question or exactly in the way that you expected, you can rest assured I'm going to be passing them along to Schuyler and Ember. And the second thing I want to say is a little message to both Schuyler and Ember to remember there are so many questions that people want answered that we want to keep our answers brief so that we can get to as many as we can as we proceed. Okay, so we're going to start the question box service today with a question for Schuyler. And here's your question, Schuyler. If Unitarian Universalism is accepting of and draws from many different religions and has no set creed or directive to believe in God, can it really be a religion? Thought we'd dive in with a good juicy one to start out with.
Yes, yeah, that is a great question, and there's obviously a lot of different opinions about that. We have members certainly at Fourth Universalist who consider themselves members in good standing and do not consider themselves religious. I would say a couple of things about this question. One, I think certainly Unitarian Universalism has religious roots, and we come out of a religious tradition. Even if you disagree about what we are now, I would say, so that's point one. Two, I would say that that religion is not something that is so easily defined as having a belief in God. There's a lot of different ways that religion has been expressed throughout the millennia of human existence. When you start to try to reduce it to a belief in God or a certain belief in a creed, religion starts to become something much more narrow than it actually is in sort of the history and practice of the human experience. So I would be hesitant to remove that from it. And I think it also, and a third point, I think it also prevents us as Unitarian Universalists and as individuals from readapting the word religious and the word spirituality for our own use. If we abandon it, we let other people define it for us, and that's ceding something that I don't think we're ready to cede. And I think it also denies the fact that for many people who are UUs, it is very religious. We are not a humanist organization. We are a pluralistic one. And so we do have people who are atheists, but we also have people who gather in UU congregations for very spiritual reasons. And so there's also an inclusivity argument for that. So those are, I think, four thoughts on the top of my head about why we could be considered a religious organization, why I consider us to be a religious organization. Those at Fourth, you know that I am not a theist. I do not. I am more of a humanist myself, and for me, the religious humanism that I embrace needs a religiousness to it for lots of reasons. But those are four kind of more academic reasons for it. Yeah.
Okay, and as a follow-up to that for you, Schuyler, because we actually got quite a few questions that asked about being an atheist and can you be an atheist and be religious and those types of questions. So one of the questions was, as a minister leading prayer, does it make you feel uncomfortable when you see atheists sorry, let me say it the way they wrote it. Does it make you uncomfortable when you see atheists open-eyed staring back at you?
No, I don't actually watch when I am praying. I don't actually watch any of you, so I don't want anyone to feel like they're on display. First of all, no, I think for me, prayer, and again, as someone who is a humanist, I don't when I pray and I want to offer prayers, I don't offer them expecting that there's some being up there that is listening. There are many UUs, many members of our communities that believe that, but for me, prayer is a beautiful way of putting words and intentions to something that is inexpressible, something that is deeply felt, something that deserves and to be honored by being named. And part of what we do when we do our prayers or do our joys and sorrows here, or we're naming things of value. And if we don't name them, uh, then they go missing. They don't go remembered or marked. And so prayer is a way of inviting our attention to things that matter for me. And I think that's something that no matter who you are, whether you are a Christian or Jewish or Buddhist or atheist or something else, we all desire that things should be important, things that matter. Our lives are important. The people we love are important. And for me, the way that UUs can pray in a pluralistic environment is by re-envisioning it and reclaiming it, like we would reclaim the word religion, as a way of honoring those things that matter.
Okay, thank you, Schuyler. So Ember, here's a question for you. When one faith tradition contradicts another faith tradition, how can you hold on to those incompatible belief systems with integrity? And the follow-up question to that they wrote was, how do you handle the loneliness of belonging between traditions?
Well, first of all, the real challenge of getting two people with seminary degrees to speak briefly. But oh man, this is
And I'm timing you guys.
yeah, hit me with a big one right out the gate here. So as somebody that grew up like evangelical and very much with like a every other tradition is going to hell sort of worldview, coming out of that has really been a journey of expanding my theology and expanding how I understand meaning, how I understand the world around me. And it definitely, it did challenge my sense of belonging to even dive into the follow-up as part of the main question. When you are raised in this very rigid, but also very like, you belong in the in-group, you are the saved ones, you are good to go. Like when you leave that, when you challenge that, it really does lead to a sense of loss of something. And there's often still that back of your head, like, well, but what if they are right? What if I'm wrong now? But I think that it is entirely possible to live in a context where we can respect and honor different traditions and to bring them together in some senses as well. I know I have definitely in the last year engaged more in like very like earth-based spirituality and those concepts much more than I ever had before. Whereas growing up, yoga would have perhaps been sinful, like engaging in things like that, and finding more ways to ground in that sense. So I think that it takes respect of each tradition. It takes acknowledging both the things that you love and don't like about maybe the tradition you grew up with, but also how those informed you, like to realize that my life has been shaped by the upbringing that I had, but then to respect and honor different traditions. Like when I was engaging with Buddhist friends in Vietnam and like admitting that I definitely didn't know everything and that I wanted to learn from them, to engage in a respectful way is really important. So I think that it's possible to, even though sometimes they have these conflicting ideas, it's possible to live in that complicated world. One of my friends in seminary often talked about both and it's, you know, this idea that sometimes we can embrace two things even if they seem like they might not completely agree.
Thank you for that, Ember. And I love the idea of the both and, because as we move into the next question, which will be for Schuyler, is this idea of this divided world that we live in, where everybody has a specific, you have to stand for this or you have to stand for that, and to know that there's a third possibility called both and being able to embrace that. So back to you, Schuyler, moving forward with this. So someone asked this question: the great Unitarian Universalist minister Olympia Brown exhorted us to stand by this faith. How can we continue to find faith and hope in the not so United States of America and the world that is in such turmoil? That's for you, Schuyler.
Thank you. That's a great question. It's the million-dollar question, I think, that a lot of us have struggled with this year, the last 4 years. I always start by reminding myself that although these recent years have been particularly, I think, galling and disturbing for many, many reasons, you know, we can look back in the past and remember that the world has also faced really dark times. It has faced really divisive times. Reading about the early fights of the senators in the House from the 19th century, they were pretty dysfunctional. And as we are today, of course. I think there's a degree of remembering that we are part of history. And I know certainly I was raised, maybe this was a 90s kid thing, but the sense that the end of history, that the Soviet Union had ended, that these things were, that we were onwards and upwards forever, it's a progressive ideal, that is not a healthy way of looking at this world. We have to see it much more as back and forth. You know, the ancient Greeks and ancient Romans never would have dreamed that their civilization would have collapsed for, 1,000 years, only to be rediscovered during the Renaissance. We just don't know how history is going to unfold, and so we have to be open to the road being a lot longer and harder than we think, and not have our spiritual resiliency depend upon the world that we can't control, because there are a lot of forces that are really, really destructive out there, and you and me and UUs en masse are not able to control it. We can do our best, and we try really hard, and I've certainly been proud of how we've mobilized around things like UU the vote and reclaim our vote. But I think we have to let go of this illusion that we can control everything, because we can't. And so part of our spiritual practice has to be settling into the unknown and recognizing that generations of people before have faced really difficult times and come through it. And that human beings are not rational, and we like to think that they are, that you can just educate people into knowledge and wisdom, and irrationality and illusion and falsities are really ingrained into the human existence, and we have to take those seriously as a player in the arc of history, and that will always probably be a player in human history. So I think it's easy to be optimistic, and I'm not suggesting that we shouldn't be hopeful, but I think we also have to be realistic, and then from that realism comes a deeper sense and wisdom about the nature of our world and the nature of human beings and how we play out our lives.
Well, thank you so much, Schuyler. And I'm seeing some questions coming in through the chat. And what I love is that we are able to be a congregation of questions. And again, thank you for putting those into the chat, which we will save and be able to answer at a future date. I'm now going to take a brief break and ask Sean to give us a musical interlude. Think of this like when you're in a boxing match where both They go to the corner to take a deep breath and have a drink, and then we'll come back in just a minute with some more challenging questions.
All right, love it. Thanks, Liz, and thanks, Ember and Reverend Schuyler. As I say, this will be a brief interlude. I wanted to do something fun in the spirit of what this service is about for this. And I was like, what is the ultimate interlude song that revolves around something with questions? And I thought, and then I finally started thinking of this theme, and I thought it might be fun just to share a little bit about it, because I think it actually has kind of a cool history with it. Jeopardy is certainly a show that many of us know, and it has been around for ages and ages and ages, and has certainly changed as a piece that has embraced how we ask questions over the years for many, many years. And of course, it's been much on the minds of many these days, as we know, even recently with the passing of the longtime host, Alex Trebek, another Canadian as well this past year. But one of the most interesting things is that theme, which of course in a game show that is literally all about posing your answer as a question, and the pursuit of knowledge, truly, is that what many people don't know in that theme is that theme was actually composed by the show's creator, Merv Griffin. And just for a bit of fun trivia on it as well, this song, which is called Think, Merv Griffin, the composer of it, and the creator of Jeopardy, actually wrote as a lullaby for his son. And, wrote it in about under a minute, they said. He just kind of came up with the tune in his head in under a minute. And so what many people call this song is actually one of the most lucrative minutes ever created in history, because, as we know, as a songwriter or a composer, you often get paid as a result of people playing your song in repetition with royalties. Happy Birthday is a perfect example of this. Happy Birthday is still very much under royalty, and people estimate that it makes about $2 million a year, just to give you an idea of that. Probably about $10,000 you would pay to get that in a movie. So anytime you hear Happy Birthday in a movie, you know roughly about how much has been paid for it. But the theme to Jeopardy, even though it's less than a minute and took less than a minute to compose, they estimate over the course of Jeopardy's history has made roughly $70 to $80 million for the show's creator, Merv Griffin. So just something to think about. And I hope that you'll enjoy my shorter than a minute version of Jeopardy. It's not going to make that much money in this short of time, but I hope that you'll enjoy it. Over to round two.
It's probably one song that all people know immediately the reference to when they hear it. Okay, back to starting off our second round. I'm starting the clock here, starting our second round with Ember, and bringing the questions a little closer to home around Fourth U. Ember, a question came in: what are the goals for A Time for All Ages?
I want to say that I might have had to answer this in my interview process as well, so I feel slightly more prepared. I feel like, as somebody who's grown up in faith communities, that kids moment, the Time for All Ages, as it's called in the UU world, is oftentimes both for the kids and also for the adults, which is perhaps even stranger in this online world, is that there's perhaps less kids, and they're not easily as gathered around in a circle to be directly interacted with. So there's even more consideration about, like, what are adults hearing when I say this? But I think that A Time for All Ages is a chance to really think about what a service is about, a theme of a service, a deeper meaning that's being got at in the message, and take that and both connect to it in a sense that it can lead up to it, but also just distill it into more simple and relatable terms so that especially younger people can get to interact with it. I think that one of the things that I really love engaging with is getting a chance to ask questions of the youth now that I've gotten to know the community a bit better, and have Time for All Ages be a chance where the congregation as a whole can also hear the wisdom of our young people, which was something I loved about our multi-generational service as well. But I think that it's really important to remind the young people of our congregation that they are part of the congregation. And Time for All Ages is, a good opportunity to make that a reality in our service.
Wonderful, thank you for that. And I concur that hearing the questions and the comments from our youth is so valuable to my church experience, especially now that my children are older and I don't get to see them doing it. I love being able to meet and see the world through the eyes of our youth. And an example of that was the question that Opal asked this morning, which was profound. And I can't wait to hear what you have to say about that. Okay, so Schuyler, there were a lot of questions about, here we are in the middle of a pandemic. What's our plan? What's our plan for coming back? What will it look like? How will it affect RE and other church programming? And what are the challenges, opportunities that have been brought forth for Fourth U through this pandemic experience?
Yeah, great question. Great question. So the plan, a few sort of overview details. Our hope is that at latest we can regather in person, perhaps for opening Sunday in September. That is my hope. That is where, in my mind, I am thinking of us getting back together as having a big unveiling then after the summer, coming back. It's possible it could happen before. There's just so many uncertainties about everything, and so there's some level of us are just having to roll with the unknown. We don't know how the vaccine rollout will go. We know that's already underperforming nationally and also here in New York City. We don't know how it will affect children, who haven't really been tested that much, and we want to make sure that they are safe. There's just a lot we don't know. So we are talking with folks. We actually have a plan. The board and I have put together a plan that's tentative about kind of what that reopening might look like and what steps we will take to make sure that we are all safe when we do get back together. But fundamentally, we don't want to come back until everyone can get back. We don't want to feel like some people are excluded from being in person and other people are able to come. We do have a couple of really exciting plans we're working through. One is that we are planning to invest in really top-notch live streaming services so that for those who have been joining us from all around the country and all around the world, you should be able to continue to do that if that's something that you would like to do. We're going to be having multiple cameras installed in the sanctuary. It's going to be on Zoom and on Facebook and on the website, hopefully to be able to engage in the chat function and have coffee hour if people like, because we really want to make sure that our international focus that we've been able to develop continues, and people who have maybe moved away, as we have a lot of our members have gone various places since this pandemic started. We want you to keep on being with us. So I think there's a lot of opportunities as well, an opportunity to invest in this technology, in the online ministry that we're doing. Work like Ember has done a lot of tremendous work around social media and podcasting that we will continue to do. I think even with our kind of classes and our meetings, of whether Zoom is actually a more effective way to bring people in. We've actually seen greater attendance at things like the equinox and solstice services online than we do in person. And so maybe that's something we keep doing. I don't know. We'll see. New York is such a strange place because we're all scattered about. We're kind of a transient place. And so we're trying to meet this stuff head on. But as far as reopening, we really want to make sure everyone is safe. We want to be scientifically grounded. We don't want to play on fear. And we want to make sure that we follow the experts and we do what is recommended by those people who know. So we're really excited about the UUA coming out with a plan. I know they're going to come out with recommendations, and we're going to follow those, as well as our city and state. So a lot to be working on, and I think we're well prepared, I think, to move forward when it's time.
Great, thank you for that. And quickly, Ember, for you, how will this, similar question, but in terms of the RE, or the religious education of our community, what challenges and opportunities have you faced, and do you expect that will come from this?
Yeah, definitely. And it seems appropriate that actually Reverend Schuyler in our most recent meeting spent a good deal of time talking about this, and we did not know about this one beforehand. But we've been in the midst of doing our own planning and conversations. So, I mean, the interesting thing is that I started this position amidst all of this. And so I think for a lot of REs like DREs that I've talked to outside of Fourth and in the wider UU world, a lot of them, have their idea of what things were before, whereas I didn't have like assumptions to go off of. I came into this, knowing that I was coming in the middle of the pandemic. And so one of my goals has been to really, build programming and build structures that will continue on when we go back and perhaps a more hybrid setting. And even once, whatever normal is, once that happens, that we'll still be able to keep things going, like Reverend Schuyler said with the podcast, or maybe we have our speakers be a broadcast online, and we consider different options. So I think that this online world, I'm thankful that I, speaking as a child of the 90s, as I grew up with the internet and was like on Zynga and MySpace and LiveJournal and, building all these communities online, that I learned a lot about how to connect with people in a digital setting. And it's been a real challenge. But I think that our RE program is, still just focusing on being really vibrant and having a bright future. And we are also looking at technology options on how public schools are handling things, on how hybrid learning is working in classrooms, and how we could maybe incorporate some of that as well. So we're considering a lot of things.
Wonderful. Well, I want to say that I have experienced also with the music part, where we had a rehearsal for our choir piece over Zoom, which is a first, which Sean handled beautifully. And so I do see many opportunities for us to expand who we touch and how we can include people. Okay, here's the final question for both of you. So keep this one brief. We'll start with you, Ember, since you have the mic. 40 years from now, what would you tell the youth about the significant events of 2020? You have 1 minute.
2020 was an interesting year. The challenges of our world have really exposed a lot of the injustices that exist in our society. My hope is that in 40 years, a lot of those will have been challenged and changed, and that as a human society, we can do better, we should do better, and we should honor the people that we lost and do better for sure. So I think that 2020 is a year of a lot being revealed, that we can and should and must do better.
Okay, thank you. How about you, Schuyler?
Yeah, that was a great answer. I think we will look back at 2020 as a year that was really unlike any other, certainly in my lifetime, and I think in a lot of people's lifetime. I'm sure there'll be a lot of great books written about it, and I think this idea of hoping that out from all of the sadness and grief and disaster, whether it's losses around Black Lives Matter, whether it's losses from the pandemic and the rampant individualism and selfishness that comes from people not wearing masks and being resistant to science, whether it's through the deeply disturbing efforts to undermine our democracy, that having exposed these things for the pernicious and vile behaviors that they are, that our society in 40 years has recognized that and made the work and done the work to change for the better. There's a lot of worrying things that came out from this year, but there's also a lot of hopeful signs that I think our society comes into 2021 with that could be very different. We could have ended this year in a very darker place than where we have been. So I'm hopeful for that, and hopeful that in 40 years, when all of us get to talk to our descendants, we can say this was a learning moment, and we continued to do the work and didn't stop.
Well, thank you both, Schuyler and Ember. Well done. So appreciative of your incredible wisdom and willingness to be put on the spot and have those difficult questions answered.